The cherry red convertible gleamed like fresh blood in my parents' driveway. I hadn't even unbuckled my seatbelt, and there she was, my sister Chloe, twirling like a pageant queen beside her brand new car. She squealed, "Isn't she gorgeous?" Then she ran her manicured fingers across the hood like she'd won the lottery. Maybe she had with my money. My name is Rachel Bennett, and I just found out my sister spent my entire house fund, $50,000 on a car, and my parents helped her do it. I stood there still in my work clothes, after a 12-hour shift at the financial firm, while Chloe posed for selfies and Mom popped open champagne. They drained my account. They didn't ask. They didn't warn me. They just smiled and said, "Family comes first." That was the moment I realized, in this family, I was never part of the first pause breathe. Now listen, if your family did this to you, would you walk away? Would you fight back? Or would you finally show them who they really raised? Let me know right now in the comments and hit subscribe. If you're ready for a story where karma doesn't knock, it kicks the door down. This is just the beginning. I've always been the responsible one. Not just in the pays her bills on time kind of way. I mean the girl who made breakfast at 9 years old because Mom had a migraine again. The teenager who balanced Dad's checkbook at 13 because he just couldn't get the numbers right. The college student who worked 2 jobs while Chloe failed out of her 3rd major. That was me, Rachel Bennett, a daughter, a sister, a walking safety net. I'm 30 now. I work in risk management at a firm in downtown Boston. And for the past 8 years, I've lived below my means, budgeted every cent, skipped vacations, turned down nights out, all for one goal: to buy my first home. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with natural light and enough space for a desk by the window, and I was close. So close. My house fund had finally hit $50,000. It was the one thing in my life that was mine. Until Chloe wrecked it with a car. Chloe is 24, she's dazzling. Big eyes, white teeth, perfect hair. She floats through life with champagne in one hand and someone else's credit card in the other. She's never finished anything, school jobs, relationships, but she always lands on her feet because my parents catch her. Every time they say she just needs a little help, what they mean is, I'll handle it. When Dad took early retirement at 55, with no savings, I covered his credit card minimums. When Mom's emergency dental work came up, I co-signed the loan. When Chloe needed a reliable car for interviews, I helped set up a family emergency fund. I called it a safety net, but really it was just a leash around my neck. They never called it stealing. They called it love. They called it sacrifice. They called it what family does. But what about what I needed? At first, I didn't even notice the withdrawals. The fund wasn't in use. I hadn't touched it in months. Then the overdraft alert started. I thought it was a mistake. A glitch? It wasn't. When I pulled into my parents' driveway that night, still sweaty from the subway and clutching a half-eaten protein bar, I saw Chloe's new car, red flashy top-down music blasting, and her smiling like she'd won the Powerball. She had no idea she'd just declared war. I stepped out of my Honda, quiet, calm, and I asked the question I already knew the answer to. "Where did you get the money for this?" Chloe rolled her eyes. Mom sipped champagne. Dad smiled like nothing was wrong. And then Mom said it. "We just used the emergency fund. Honey." She needed a reliable car for interviews. For what, the 4th job this year? The 5th excuse. They weren't sorry, not one of them. Chloe flipped her hair and smirked. "You're good with money, you'll save it again. Besides, you always say, family comes first." I looked at my mother, the woman who once borrowed my birthday money to cover Chloe's dance recital. I looked at my father, who retired before planning how to eat the next decade. I looked at Chloe, the golden child, the princess. And I realized they didn't think they stole from me. They thought they deserved it, because in their eyes, I didn't build that account, we did. Because in their story, I'm just the background, the support system, but not anymore. I walked back to my car. My hands were shaking. My heart wasn't. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the one who fixed it. I was going to be the one who finished it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my apartment with a cold cup of tea and a copy of my latest bank statement, just staring at the number $127.43. That's what was left. 12 years of discipline. Weekends skipped, birthdays. Saved bonuses untouched, gone. And for what? so Chloe could drive a car that matched her lipstick. By morning, the family group chat was already lit up. Chloe had posted selfies with the car. Dad had commented with heart emojis. Mom texted me privately, "Don't be upset, sweetheart. It was for Chloe's future. You always said you wanted her to succeed." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the last 12 months of statements to myself. Then I called Bryce. He didn't even hesitate. "Come over," he said. "Bring wine. Bring rage." By the time I got to his apartment, he already had his laptop open and 2 glasses ready. Bryce and I had met during a corporate audit 2 years ago. Smart, level-headed, wicked sense of humor. We'd stayed friends that night. He became my partner in quiet war. "Let's find out exactly what they took," he said. Fingers already flying over keys. Within an hour, we found it. The old joint account I'd opened with Mom back in college meant to help with tuition. Never officially closed. Still active. They'd been using it for years. Tiny transfers. 50 here, 25 there. Just small enough to slip under my radar until Chloe took it all. Bryce leaned back, eyes wide. "They've been draining you, Rachel. Not just recently, systematically." I stared at the screen, and for a second I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just about the house fund anymore, it was everything. "That's it," I whispered. "I'm done." Bryce nodded. "Then we do this right." We spent the next 3 hours building a file. Bank statements, account histories, emails, screenshots. I wrote out every instance I could remember. Every loan I co-signed, every favor I covered, every lie they told me was love. At midnight, I called the bank. "This is Rachel Bennett. I need to close account number 731492. "Yes, effective immediately." The representative paused. "Just to confirm, you understand. This will affect all linked credit lines and auto payments. That's exactly what I want." She confirmed the action. I hung up, and I felt lighter. For the first time, I wasn't just the strong one, I was the smart one, and I was going to make sure they felt every cent they took. The next day, the calls started. Mom first, then Dad, then Chloe. I didn't answer. They texted, "The bank's calling. Our cards aren't working." "What did you do?" "Your sister's in tears." "You're destroying this family?" "No. They destroyed it." I just pulled the plug on day 3. I agreed to meet them. Bryce offered to come. So did Naomi. But I needed to face them alone. When I walked into their living room, it was like stepping into a bad play. Chloe was crying on the couch. Mom had mascara trails down her cheeks. Dad stood by the window, pacing. "You have to fix this," he said. The moment he saw me, I sat down slow and calm. "I'm not here to fix anything you don't understand," Mom begged. "The bank is threatening to call in the line of credit." "Good," I said. "Let them," Chloe sprang up shrieking. "I'm going to lose my car." "You mean my car," I corrected. "Paid for with my savings." "You're just jealous," she screamed. "That they love me more," I smiled. "Maybe, but you know what else? I'm done." Dad raised his voice for the first time in years. "You've always been the responsible one. Why would you let this happen? Because being responsible doesn't mean being your doormat." I stood, looked each of them in the eye, and dropped the final blow. "By the way, those loans you forged with my name, I found them, and I've already filed the report." The silence in that room was almost holy. "You wouldn't," Mom whispered. "I already did." Then I walked out. No more explanations, no more apologies, no more guilt. Just one thought repeating in my mind like a mantra. They chose this, not me. I expected silence after I walked out, but they didn't stop, not even for a day. By the time I got back to my apartment, the missed calls had piled up. Mom, Dad, Chloe, even Aunt Teresa. Some begged, some blamed, some just sent strings of question marks. But it was Chloe's last message that made me laugh. "Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. Hope you're happy. Happy not yet, but getting there." Bryce stayed the night on my couch that week. Naomi dropped off groceries. I didn't ask for help, they just showed up. That's how I knew they were my real family. 3 days after cutting them off, Bryce sat across from me at the kitchen table, his laptop open. "You ready for this?" he asked. I nodded. He turned the screen toward me. It was all there, over $300,000, siphoned across the past 6 years. Loans, credit cards, auto payments tied to my name. My credit report littered with accounts I'd never seen. Some dated back to when I was still in college. They used your name to refinance their condo, he said. Twice? And Chloe? I asked. He scrolled again. She's been applying to jobs using you as a reference. Claimed you were her manager at a financial firm. Gave them your real work number. I blinked. Then I laughed a bitter, tired laugh. That explains the voicemail from HR last week. The betrayal wasn't new, but seeing it all laid out like this, it was like staring at a broken bone under an X-ray. You knew it hurt, but now you knew why. The next morning, I filed my police report. Naomi came with me. Detective Rivera handled the case. She was calm, focused, efficient. This is serious, she said, flipping through the paperwork. Multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, financial abuse. Then she paused. Are you sure you want to proceed? Once we press charges, there's no going back. I didn't even flinch. Yes, I'm sure. That night I got a call from my boss, Mr. Harrison. He sounded tired. Worried, Rachel. I just received a reference request from a company downtown. They say Chloe listed you as her former supervisor. She didn't work here. I said I figured. He hesitated. She claimed she had a finance degree. She dropped out after 1 semester. Silence, then understood also. I've spoken to the board. Given how you've handled this situation and how you uncovered the fraud, we want to offer you a promotion. Senior risk analyst. I couldn't speak. Take tomorrow off, he added. File the reports. Handle what you need to. Your job's safe. When I hung up, I sat in the dark. No tears, no rage. Just a strange new feeling. Freedom. The next afternoon, Detective Rivera called. Your parents' credit lines have defaulted. The banks are pursuing restitution. Will they be arrested? I asked. She paused. Yes, we expect to issue warrants by the end of the week. Bryce looked up from his laptop when I told him they're going to spin this, he warned. Make you look cruel. He was right. By morning, Chloe had posted a long rant on social media. My sister betrayed our family, she stole everything, and now she's trying to put our parents in jail. Please share our GoFundMe for legal fees. I reported the fundraiser, then I turned off my phone. That evening, the doorbell rang. Naomi opened it, and there stood Detective Rivera. They tried to appeal the charges, she said, handing me a folder. Claimed you gave them verbal permission for all of it. I opened the folder. Inside, copies of forged documents, signatures that weren't mine, loan requests I'd never seen. They're desperate, she said quietly, and the judge didn't buy it. Appeals denied. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. They'd always counted on me backing down, but now the law was on my side, and karma. Karma had a badge. It was the moment I realized I wasn't just a victim, I was the key witness. And now I had the plan. The execution, that would be precise. By Friday, the arrest warrants had been issued. Detective Rivera called me just before noon. We're coordinating pickup in the next 48 hours. I'll keep you updated. I thanked her and hung up just as my office line rang. Mr. Harrison, again Rachel. He said we just intercepted another attempt. Chloe tried applying for a position at our competitor. Same false credentials. Same forged references. I didn't even flinch. She's not going to stop. No, he agreed. But the good news. Their legal team is compiling evidence too. She's going to face a separate set of charges that night. Naomi brought champagne to my apartment. Celebrate early, she grinned, setting the bottle down. You know what the best revenge is? Living well, I offered. She shook her head. Living well in a house they'll never step foot in. She was right. Bryce sat nearby, typing furiously on his laptop. You won't believe this, he said, spinning the screen toward me. More transfers. A complex trail of transactions dating back years. Chloe's tuition at a private high school. My parents' cruise vacation in 2019. Even the emergency roof repair on their condo. All paid from my accounts. How I whispered through the joint account you never closed. They'd buried it under layers of withdrawals and small transfers. But the pattern is clear now. I stared at the spreadsheet, feeling the blood rush in my ears. How much in total? Just over $312,000, not including the forged co-signer documents. I had to sit down. Naomi rested a hand on my shoulder. You were their retirement plan, she said softly, and Chloe's lifestyle fund. And they called me selfish. The next morning, I sent a formal letter to every financial institution involved, requested all documentation, flagged fraud, demanded investigations. Then I filed a civil lawsuit. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about record. about making sure they could never do this to anyone else again. Bryce helped me draft the legal documents. Naomi connected me with a financial recovery lawyer, Detective Rivera, provided witness statements from the banks. It was like watching the final pieces of a machine lock into place. I wasn't unraveling anymore. I was building something. By the end of the week, Chloe's car had been repossessed. I watched the video on Naomi's phone. Chloe screaming in the driveway, clinging to the car door as the tow truck pulled away. My mother trying to argue with the driver. My father pacing behind them, holding useless paperwork. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt clear. They were finally feeling consequences, and I didn't have to scream to be heard. I just had to let the truth do the talking. A few days later, my lawyer handed me a manila envelope. Inside physical evidence of forged loan documents with my signature. "That's your nail in the coffin," he said. This combined with the financial trail guarantees prosecution. They won't walk away from this. At that moment, my phone rang. Blocked number, I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. It was Chloe. Her voice was shaky, angry, desperate. "You're ruining our lives. Dad's being investigated. Mom's crying nonstop. I hope you're proud. You're a terrible sister. You'll regret this." I saved the voicemail, sent it to Detective Rivera. A few hours later, she replied, "Thanks, that counts as harassment under active investigation. We'll include it." The following day, the police knocked on their door. Bryce and I watched the news together. A local segment flashing across the screen. Suburban couple arrested for identity theft and fraud. Daughter allegedly used as financial proxy for over a decade. They showed footage of my parents being led out in handcuffs. Chloe was not in the frame, but her voice could be heard yelling from inside. Naomi popped open the champagne. Bryce raised a glass. "To the quiet ones," he said. "The ones they thought would never fight back." I clinked my glass with his. "To consequences," I replied. "And to the house I'm about to buy. With my money." The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, just in silence. I sat alone on the front bench, clutching the printed victim impact statement in my hands. 3 pages, 12 years, one truth. Across the aisle, my parents sat at the defense table, dressed like strangers, stiff, silent, broken in all the wrong ways. Chloe slouched behind them, arms crossed, eyes full of fire. She refused to meet mine. The judge entered. All rise. We stood. "The court will now hear the case of the state versus April and Thomas Bennett." The clerk read before anything else could begin. Their lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my clients wish to change their plea to guilty on all counts." Gasps echoed from the gallery. Chloe snapped upright. "What?" The judge looked over his glasses. "You understand this waives your right to trial, to present a defense?" My father nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge turned to me. "Miss Bennett, the court will now hear your victim impact statement." I stood slowly, heels clicking against the marble floor. I unfolded the pages, hands steady now. "Your Honor," I began. "My name is Rachel Bennett. For over a decade, I was not just a daughter, I was collateral. I was a silent guarantor for everything they couldn't afford and didn't earn." I glanced at my parents. Mom cried quietly. Dad looked down. "When I was 14, I gave up birthday money so Chloe could attend a dance workshop. At 17, I worked weekends so she could apply to her dream school. At 22, I co-signed my first loan without knowing I had. I paused. I never said no, because I believed saying yes made me good. What I didn't realize was that it made me a target. I looked right at Chloe. She rolled her eyes, but she didn't interrupt. Over the course of 6 years, they drained over $300,000 from my name. They forged my signature, hijacked my credit, and weaponized the very trust they raised me to offer. I inhaled. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was knowing that every time they smiled at me, every birthday dinner, every hug, they were lying. Chloe stood up. "She's exaggerating. She's making us look like criminals." The judge raised a hand. "Miss Bennett, one more outburst, and you'll be removed," I continued. Today I asked the court not just to acknowledge what they stole from me in dollars, but what they stole in dignity. And I asked that they be held accountable for that. I folded the pages, stepped back, and sat down. The judge cleared his throat. "Given the defendant's guilty plea and the evidence presented, I hereby sentence April and Thomas Bennett to 5 years in state prison with eligibility for parole after 3 A beat." And regarding Miss Chloe Bennett, your trial on separate charges will begin next week. Chloe gasped. You can't do this. You're ruining our family. No, I said calmly. You did that all by yourselves. As officers approached to escort my parents out, Mom turned to me. We did everything for you. I stood. No, you did everything to me. There's a difference, Chloe lunged forward, but their lawyer held her back. You're dead to me, she screamed. Funny, I'd never felt more alive. Outside the courthouse, the press waited. Microphones, cameras, questions. Miss Bennett. Do you regret pressing charges against your parents? I didn't flinch. They weren't arrested because of me. They were arrested because of what they did. Naomi and Bryce flanked me like bodyguards. Detective Rivera waited with a protective escort. We didn't stop for interviews. We walked straight to the parking lot. Want to grab lunch? Bryce asked. I pulled out my phone. No time. He raised an eyebrow. I have a house closing to get to Naomi. Whooped. You bought it? I smiled. Keys are waiting. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror just long enough to see Chloe screaming into her phone on the courthouse steps. But I didn't stop. And I didn't look back. I was done carrying guilt that didn't belong to me. The house smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. Granite counters, bay windows, a quiet street, no yelling, no guilt. Naomi set the last moving box on the kitchen island. Bryce popped open a bottle of champagne. And I just stood there soaking it all in. All mine bought with money I earned. Built on decisions I made, not borrowed, not stolen. I opened a drawer. Smooth hinges, soft wood. There was peace in that sound. You okay, Naomi asked. I nodded, for the first time in my life. Yeah, I think I am. My phone buzzed. A news alert, Chloe Bennett sentenced to 3 years for fraud. I didn't click the link, I didn't need to. That chapter was closed. Detective Rivera dropped by later that afternoon, envelope in hand. Final update, she said. Your parents' appeal was denied. They're officially serving full time. And the GoFundMe they started taken down for fraud. I smiled, but it wasn't cruel. It was clean. Thank you, I said quietly. She nodded. You did the hard part. You told the truth. After she left, Bryce turned on music. Naomi started rearranging furniture. I sat on the floor with a cup of tea. No debts, no secrets. No more pretending I was okay while carrying everyone else's chaos. This house, this peace, was mine. They say the best revenge is living well, but I think it's simpler than that. The best revenge is finally living for yourself and never apologizing for it again.